Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the NPStudents podcast. This week our word is uncertainty, which I know you guys have probably been hearing a lot of right now. It's pretty much on every commercial, every advertisement. You're hearing it all the time. But we wanted to have a very real, very serious conversation about it. So I have two incredible, famous, unbelievable, influential. Everybody's gonna be like, how did you get those two? Grant and Madison are here on the podcast today, which is really amazing. Because you guys, we were just talking about this, have 8.5 years
8.5,
at
almost
North
9,
Point. Yeah.
Maybe 9. I don't know.
Yeah, and then all
there.
of high school for you, like from freshman year on. And both these two are part of the class of 2020.
Boom.
So,
Best class.
yeah, we're going to talk in a second about why you guys are really great fits for this conversation, but also just tell people who don't know who you are a little bit about you. Grant, no, you just graduated, struggled in the athletic department a little bit, wish you could jump like me.
Yeah. 6
Actually,
verticals.
Yeah.
Doesn't do it.
Yeah, I know. It really is down to 6 for me. Like that's that's a true. I never could really jump, so I want to clarify there. But
earlier you said 4, so I think you just added.
Yeah, maybe I'm being generous.
Just for the effect.
Like how tall are you? Like not the basketball card, but like your real height. Like how
Your real height.
like how tall are you?
Basketball wise, probably 6'4", 6'5".
Okay.
But on paper, I'm like 5'10".
Okay, but you like literally play like 6'5". Like that is what you're known for. You literally can jump out of the building, and I can't do that at all. Like it really is fascinating to watch.
Yeah,
and it's only gotten worse since high school for me. Like I'm really gravity challenged. It's sad to watch. Anyways, we'll move on for that because that's not the point. And then Madison, you also played basketball.
I did.
And then graduated this class 2020 and beyond starting a company when you're 16. Have done not much with your life, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys for being here. There's a lot of reasons that I'm excited for you guys to be a part of this conversation. One, because we have traveled the world together, and I'm excited to share some stories from that because it's really relevant to our conversation as well. But also because of our topic, because of this idea of uncertainty. Just from being a part of this graduating class, I really do. I mean, the year of 2020 is going to go down in history books, and you guys graduated with this class. So just your experience with that, I want to hear from you guys. Then I just happen to know enough about your personal stories as well to know that you guys have been through a lot for people just graduating high school. Like you've experienced some real life, and I think it prepares you to speak into these conversations in some unique ways. So let's jump in. Real quick, y'all's opinion. You're going to find I'm very random on these, but because you both played basketball, are you guys enjoying the bubble, like the NBA bubble? Are you?
I am.
It's fun.
Okay. I feel like it's like controversial. Like some people are like, "Oh, it's lame." There's no. I'm like loving it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just neutral.
Yeah.
Like it's not no home team, no away teams, no fans. Like it's just like it's pure basketball.
Yeah, and it's like unique. It's like 1 year you can hear everything they say.
Well, what I've loved about it is keeping up with like the Instagram accounts of all the players. Like Jamal Murray, I think that's his name. I may sound pretty dumb.
Yeah.
But he saw Donovan Mitchell like an hour after they lost, and Donovan Mitchell had like 57 points.
Yeah.
He's like, I got to see this dude.
And he's like
5
sitting
minutes
outside.
after. Yeah, because they're all so tight knit. They're all
so
stuck in the
weird.
same place.
Yeah, it's so surreal. Like watching all the stories coming out of that. Who do y'all think is gonna take it? Do you have any early predictions?
I personally am a Rockets fan, and they currently right now in their series are 2-0 without Russell Westbrook. So
wow,
that's looking good, I think.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably face you guys in the next round. By we, I mean
do
Lakers.
not claim the Lakers.
You and LeBron are the same.
I've been a Lakers fan for a long time.
One. Day one.
Yeah, specifically about a year and a half
Cleveland.
since LeBron went there. I really am from Cleveland, so I'm a lifelong LeBron fan, but I'll be for whatever retirement YMCA team he plays for when he's 60. I just travel with him because the Cavs are painful to root for. Abby knows what that's like. Abby's here in the studio with us today. The only Texas team to not be in the playoffs right now is the Spurs.
Ouch.
Yeah, Pop acting like he didn't care about
Greg
that in that
Popovich.
news conference. Abby says he doesn't. He cares. I don't want to bash Pop. He's a legend.
I love Pop.
Anyways, I do too. I don't know why I said that. I apologize. If Pop's watching right now, which I'm sure he is,
For sure.
I love you and respect you. So, anyways.
I love it.
No, we were talking about this. There's a positive side to uncertainty. I feel like we're going to talk about a lot of the challenges of uncertainty today. But we were saying, Sharon, I was watching the first Lakers game Tuesday night. and I fell asleep at halftime because I'm, old now. I think it was like 9:30. And, but then I like woke up at midnight and I knew what the score was. I had alerts on my phone and stuff, but was like watching it back, knowing the score though. And that's a whole different, like if you ever done that, if somebody's like ruined a game for you, but you recorded it and you watch it back, it's a totally different experience, right? There's something to uncertainty that, like, you don't know what the game is going to be. You don't know if the girl or the guy is going to say yes. You don't know if you're going to like get the job. You don't know if you're going to get into the school. I mean, there's so much to that like, I don't know, it adds.
Well, that's the fun of it, I think, is like you don't know what's going to happen. So you're thinking about it 24/7. You're shaking, like you don't know what's going to happen. And if it turns out good, it's like I enjoyed that. It was fun. I was nervous. It came out well. But if it comes out bad, it's more of like I didn't really like that uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's such an interesting topic, because on both sides, on one side is like failure, rejection, loss. I mean,
terrible things.
Yes, exactly. And then the flip side is, success and relationships and all kinds of, achieving your dreams. And so
literally everything good.
Literally everything good. So it's like this big wall we got to navigate. Yeah, no, I feel that. So let's do this. Let's start with y'all's story, some of your experiences a little bit, because that is what I want people to know, at the beginning of the time, if they don't, just some of your insights, some of your experiences. Because here's what I think makes uncertainty tough. We talked about this in the episode. To kind of recap the episode a little bit, if you haven't watched Wired yet, or Reset, Wired is transit and Reset is our Inside Out episodes. We said the opposite of certainty, like what we're going for is not certainty. It's not, you can't ever know what exactly is going to happen tomorrow. That's possible. Yeah, it's just not what we should be chasing after. It's not helpful. And like we just talked about, it may not even always be good. Yeah. We said the opposite really is trust. The whole need for trust is that you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So that is what makes trust necessary. And so we started to have this conversation to say we want to get really practical these next 2 weeks with what does it look like to trust, and even specifically what does it look like to trust God practically. And I think for a lot of people, trusting it's some kind of feeling, it's some kind of belief. We think it's supposed to come easier than it does. And when you experience the realness of life and the difficulties of life and the loss and the setbacks of life, I think for a lot of people, that's when trusting gets really hard. Mm-hmm. And I know I've referenced this a couple times already, but I know that you two have been through a lot of that. And so I want to talk about those stories in particular to kind of navigate our conversation of what does it look like to really trust God. Yeah. And Grant, I want to start with you, and I know that this story, kind of overlaps both of you. But so many people, if we were to rewind, a couple of years back, so many people listening to this right now, even if, they're younger, at least heard of Miles Hutchison, like at least have a familiarity with. A lot of people were impacted by him, close to him, inspired by him. And some people watching, very, very close friends, which I know, Madison, you fall in that category too. For you, like you would categorize Miles as like best friend. We're not just talking like, oh, he's one of the guys, like number one closest friend, brother, like
like first, second grade. Yeah. On like we were going on a vacation, we were bringing somebody, like that's who was coming with us, kind of thing.
Yep. And as much as so many people were in kind of this like shared suffering when Miles passed, like for you and your family, like it was to a different level. Like for you guys, it was just,
I mean, that's. He called my mom, and I called his mom. Like it was like a son type of thing. So it was kind of surreal. It was really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you go through, a moment like that, if we're going to revisit that a little bit, and you grow up and you hear these things, like trust God, you hear things like God has a plan, you hear things like God loves you and God's going to protect you and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, but my best friend isn't here anymore. Yeah. What was that season like for you? I think it's something, obviously we've had a lot of conversations that will impact you for the rest of your life, but I'm talking even like the first, 6 months, like that window immediately after. What was that like?
I mean, obviously immediately when I found out, and the days after, I wasn't really thinking God. Like that wasn't at the forefront of my mind. It was, I mean, there was probably some times where I was like, why God? But I wasn't like, God. Like it was, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't really just one thing. There was a lot of different aspects to it, kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's complex.
Yeah.
It's complex. What is, when you start thinking about, like, as you're trying to figure out, like, what's next, like, how do I even, like, navigate this craziness? A lot of students were impacted a lot of different ways. We all have different ways of dealing with it. I have heard, from your small group leaders and in some of my conversations with you that, not that there's a right way to handle pain and loss and tragedy, but that you did some good things, especially for somebody in a situation like that. Nobody's going to be like perfect at that. But in terms of being like a man, I would want to go talk to this guy about how he handled loss and tragedy and setbacks and having to trust God in that period. What were some of the things you remember doing that helped start to like navigate the craziness?
I just remember, I guess I've always like tried to be a rock type of thing for other people. Like if they need something, they can come to me and they can trust me and let loose and just rant, whatever it is. And I'll be there. I'll try and help them. If I can't, I'll try and empathize. But, so in that, I guess in that moment, like in those weeks after, I just kind of saw everybody was just kind of clueless. They didn't know where to go next. They weren't, I don't know how to explain it. They weren't in the know, I guess. They didn't know what they were supposed to do. And so the first thing I thought of was, I don't either. I'm just as clueless as y'all. But maybe if we put two heads together, we can figure out the next step. So I tried to be a rock for the people around me. I mean, like if somebody needed something, I would reach out to people. I would ask them if they were okay. I would ask, because people don't do that too often. Not too many people text and they're like, hey, how are you? They're usually like, yeah. It's a bad example. It's really hard to put it into words. But yeah, I guess just trying to be a rock, and that helped me. It made me feel better knowing that there was other people going through the same thing as me and that they were with me as I was with them kind of thing. It just helped me.
Yeah, it almost seemed like observing you in a time when a lot of people were withdrawing and disengaging and, trying to like numb or hide or run from pain. It felt like you were one of the voices like engaging. It felt like, you were speaking into relationships, like you were meeting people. You were like, hey, I want to get with my small group leader. Like you were willing to like confront and be in the pain.
Well, yeah, I mean, I also wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand like why God would do something like that, like those why God moments. I was really confused. It never got to the point where I hate God, like I'm not a Christian anymore type of thing. But it was more of like a, why would this happen? I know like you hear it all the time, like somebody passes, why would God do this? But like I genuinely was curious. And so I went to people that I knew would have much better answers than I did. And I asked them, I was like, I don't understand this. Will you try and unpack this for me? Like I know you can't, but will you try and explain something that will help me through this? And a lot of time it was not super helpful, but I mean, there's a few conversations I had. There was a kid in my small group. This is probably the thing that helped me most personally. Was that he said it's a waiting room. Like the earth where we live, this world is a waiting room. And so theoretically, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, we're waiting to get into heaven. It's a waiting room. All we're doing is living here and spreading the word and trying to get as many people into heaven as we can. That's our job here on earth. And so I guess what really helped me through that and why that helped me so much was he was ready. Like it was his turn. Like he was already there. Like he had loved people so unconditionally, which is something that most people never accomplish. Like most people could never do what he did and love other people like he did. I could never. Like I try. Everybody tries. But like it's impossible. And so the way I thought of it was he was already there. He had already accomplished that. Love. Pure love. Just pure love. And so God was ready for him.
He had impacted so many people that it was like...
There wasn't...
It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's like... When you think about it, it makes total sense. But then when you try and verbalize it doesn't at all.
But well, some of this you're trying to describe something that until you've lived through is difficult to completely put into words. And trying to put yourself in somebody else's situation. I think it's interesting to think about the ripple effect, even of what you just described, because from what we know of Miles' story, is that Miles engaged his pain. I mean, his setbacks in life, his medical condition he has when he's young, and he's like, I'm going to use this as a reason to love the people around me. I'm not going to use this as a reason to say like, why me, but I'm going to love people as a result of my story because I have an appreciation for life that a lot of people don't, right? And then that, overflows and inspires to you to say like, hey, this horrible thing has happened in my life, so I can either withdraw or I can engage, right? I can engage in the moment, and you see that like kind of ripple effect start to happen which is interesting to like, you know, watch and observe from you guys and so many of his closest friends. I mean, so many people in that time period. So that to me just seems like the biggest thing I keep seeing from you is like, it's not an overnight thing. It's not like just the emotion goes away. It's not like you get the perfect answer, but you choose to keep engaging. And I think the reason that I like that so much, and when we were talking, you know, behind the scenes is I think people are like, when they think about trusting God, they think about an emotion that needs to flip or switch or something like that. Or it's nonstop praying, or it's not, and I'm not saying prayer is bad, but I think that's a big portion of trusting God. But I just want people to see that it's the action that you took to say like, hey, I know I'm better with people, so I could withdraw right now, but I'm going to stay engaged with my small group. I'm going to keep asking these tough questions. I'm going to keep loving people in this season. And even though the emotions might not have caught up yet, you kept engaging. And there's a trusting element to that.
If you try and just go straight off emotions, like you said, you're never going to get anywhere. Like, that's not going to accomplish anything. You're either just going to become depressed and sad and never find happiness, or you can go out and find it. You're not just going to find happiness sitting in your room listening to sad music with the lights off. Like, you have to go out and find it. And I found that the best way that I find happiness is through other people. I find a lot of happiness being with people and hearing people's stories and being there for people. And so I think that's really what made me realize that, oh, I have to go do this. I can't just sit here and hope it comes to me. I got to go find it. So that's why I would ask mentors if they wanted to meet. I'd ask friends if they wanted to go grab coffee or something, have people over for dinners, just have fun, just try and see what could come from it.
Well, I think that's what's so helpful to the people listening to this right now is, you know, I certainly don't want to act like the pain you went through is exactly the same as the pain people are going through right now in this season of COVID and the world we're living in right now. But at the exact same time, people have the opportunity to just kind of withdraw and just try to wait out this season, or to engage in this season and to say, there's a lot of people around me right now that are hurting. There's a lot of people in my small group I can be there for. I have small group leaders in my life that want to be there for me, that want to connect with me. You know, so we have maybe more opportunities right now than we've ever had to love people because of how many people are hurting and confused right now. And so there is something to that is consistent for kind of all uncertainty or all pain, or, you know. And then Madison, I know for you, first of all, I mean, you're super involved in that same thing. I mean, you're part of that inner circle, that friend group. So you were anything but, you know, not impacted by that situation. But we were talking before this, that was one of 3 losses in 3 years for you. So I'm just interested to hear, to catch people up a little bit on your story, because even about a year before that, you had gone through something with your family to kind of kick off a crazy season for you.
So at the beginning of 2018, my cousin, he had he was bipolar. He had a lot of mental things that he was struggling with, and he had Lyme disease. And for someone that's where, you know, your whole mind gets kind of taken over by the negative thoughts. So once you're in that negative state of mind, you can't get out. So he took his own life, and that he lives in Tennessee. So we flew up there and did all of that. And at that time, I was not for sure in my faith. I was definitely kind of lingering here and there. I was kind of bored. I was in the middle of high school. You know, I didn't see my cousin that often, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But it was still like, that is crazy that he is such a good, like, he loved God so much and he loved people so much. Like, that's just crazy that a disease can do that to you. So that was kind of my thing. And then I started Meals from Madison, and that was kind of a tribute to him, which changed everything. I was way more involved at church. It gave me something to do and me and my friends to do. It was just a different experience. But then, as the year went on, I became so invested in church. So it was like I was with my friends all the time. I was at church all the time. And then that's how I got so close to Miles, was being here. And so when he passed, I think that was one of the biggest things in my life where I was like, angry at God. That was the one time, because I was so invested in church that when he passed, I saw how good of a person he was that I was just angry. And for me, I was the complete opposite of Grant. I wanted to shut down. I wanted to be alone. And to have friends like him and our inner circle who really pulled you out of that and said, you can't do that. That's not, we're going to get through this together. So for me, where I had this anger because he was gone and so many people were affected by it, I had the best support system, and it took me a little while to realize that, because all I wanted to do was shut down and be like, life sucks, everything is horrible. But I had these people that said no, and they really pulled me back in, and that's where I kind of had to find that trust with God again.
Just to give people context, I mean, part of the reason I think that resonates so much is, you talk about Meals from Madison. Just to give people context, this is a nonprofit you start when you're 16. Your heart is broken to make a difference, to love people, specifically in the homeless community.
Yeah.
So you're delivering thousands of meals a year, drives, that you put on, Camp 75, My Life, all of that. And so you're engaged in church, like you're doing good things, and you're not just like attending, you're like loving your neighbor. You're doing like everything that we talk about, right? Yeah. And then Miles is a guy that, for people who didn't know him, like he's like, it just doesn't get much better in terms of like character, kindness, loving others, right? So you're doing the right things. This is a great guy. And by all of the kind of church cliches, if you will, it feels like things should be going good in life for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? If we're going to buy into the like, well, when God has a plan, it means everything is always like fine and perfect and we never go through anything bad. So then, you have this second major loss in a year. And I think with all that context, it makes sense. The anger route is like appropriate. Like it just makes sense that's
it was a different angle for me, because it was like my first big loss of my life was a cousin that I saw 2 or 3 times a year, but was still in contact with. My second big loss was someone who I talked to every day. We hung out all the time, and it was someone who was genuinely there for me at my dark times, and I was trying to do the same thing for him. It was just, I say that friendship, I had only known you guys and Miles for about 2 years. So the way that just kind of happened so fast, like they instantly became my closest friends. And now going through that loss together, I know that they are friends that I will never, ever lose. Like, we're going to be friends forever, as cliche as that sounds.
Sure.
But we went through such a hard time together that I know that I'm never going to lose that connection.
What's crazy about that, something that stood out that you said, was that you had that support system because of church. You found those people and they pulled you out, and you couldn't hide and wallow in your room by yourself. What's crazy is that if you would have started coming to church a year later, then you wouldn't have had that support system. You wouldn't have known those people. So I think that's kind of a thing that's like, it's a big God thing. Like, it wasn't good. It was a terrible, awful thing, but you look to God and something good came from it. Yeah. You now have friends for the rest of your life. You had a support system. You talked about it. You worked your way through it, type of thing. And you wouldn't have had that unless you were a part.
Exactly.
Point.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is it didn't stop there for you, right? So like you're like learning how to process all this. I think this is so funny because we were just trying to remember the pieces of these couple of years, and there were things that you had forgotten about. Like, you've forgotten about like more pain in your life than I feel like some people have had yet in their life, because we were talking about medical things. I mean, surgeries you've had. You like broke and then rebroke your ribs. You got a thing in your neck right now. You might have a neck surgery.
It's kind of like I forget about all of the like physical stuff. The mental stuff is what gets me.
Yeah. Well, and that's a thing that I think you start to observe. And, especially, people that, even that are older than any of us, that have been through a lot of pain, they start to have this perspective on life that's like they have gone through it. They have grown through it in ways that I don't even know if we can really know about until we've been there and we've gone through. But you have this perspective. If you're like, neck surgery, what neck surgery? A couple broken ribs, who cares? Like, these things, because you have a different perspective on what is most meaningful in life now that is the result of somebody who's been through a lot of what you have. So, we planned this uncertainty, message, a couple months ago, to say this is what we're going to be talking about. a week ago, you're in another phase of all of this uncertainty, personal tragedy. And so I think that's interesting even to give context to that, because like right now in this moment, this isn't just like looking back, you've gone through it, like you're in it as we're having this podcast.
Exactly. So a week ago, my uncle had been, this is just another part of the story. My uncle, who I am very, very close to, like another father figure to me. I stayed the night at my cousin's house all the time when I was a kid. I have all these precious stories. And right after Miles had died, at the beginning of 2019, my uncle was diagnosed with leukemia. The year of 2019, he had gone from losing his hair, growing it back a little bit. Well, when we got to Christmas, he was attending all my basketball games. He was there out of the hospital for Christmas Eve tradition, and he looked amazing. Like, his hair was there, the beard was there. He was laughing, smiling, cracking jokes, and here we are 8 months later, he's gone. So a week ago, when we first got the news that the doctors could not do anything more for him, which was about 2 weeks ago, he was at that time he was in MD Anderson, which is in Houston, and all of his family's in Houston, but obviously all of his other family is here. So like wife, my cousins, everyone was here. So that was hard. Plus COVID. He can't see anyone. When that started, no one could go visit. He was by himself. We get the call about 2 weeks ago that says there's nothing more that we can do. He's going to go into hospice. Then, we have to say our goodbyes. My uncle, basically, there was a group of people that he wanted to say goodbye to. And so, obviously, me, my dad, and my sisters all went to see him. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So for him to lay there and me just hold his hand and talk and have that conversation, obviously I was so excited and relieved that I was able to see him, but it was the hardest thing because it was like the last time. Me and my dad ended up going in there when he kind of felt good. He was sitting up watching baseball. Me and my dad went in there and we talked to him for like 30 minutes. And it was the best conversation that I could have walked away with.
Wow.
We talked about all old memories. We cried, we hugged each other, and he would just tell me, all this inspirational stuff. You're so different. You are going to make a difference. I love you so much, and please don't go a day without forgetting that. That was the conversation that was our last conversation. Last Friday, so August 14th, at 11:50, my cousin texts me and is like, it's over. He's gone. We know for sure. And my first response was, like, you're joking. Same thing with Miles. My first response when someone told me that was like, are you sure? Did you check?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I didn't really know what to do. I couldn't just sit around my house and wait because I needed to be there. So I got in my car. Me and my dad went over there, and I saw him again, but he wasn't there. And that was hard, but I needed to do that for myself.
Sure.
So that whole experience is something that I am still, like, very deep into.
Right.
Yeah.
Every day is, like, kind of like a blur.
Yeah.
Like, all I can think about is that same day over and over and over again and seeing him for the last time. The difference between having that anger where I did with Miles was with this for my uncle, it was more so I didn't have that so kind of anger. I was more so relieved yet sad that he was gone.
Yeah. Well, as you go through that, first of all, thank you for being here and having this conversation today.
Oh, yeah.
Second, I'm sorry for you and your family. Knowing we've had conversations about this before, but, just as you're sitting there talking about it, I know that to talk about it is one thing, to, be in it and go through it, and you walk away from this conversation and you're still in it, I think that's part of what's interesting is a lot of times for conversations like these, we want to say like, oh, I want to talk about it, a year later when I have perspective and it's in hindsight and I've learned and I've grown. And I'm like, well, like you're in the middle of the pain, and so are people watching this, like I don't know what everybody's going through, experiencing this right now. But it's fresh and it's raw and it's real right now. So I appreciate, for that reason, you've been willing to talk about it too. I've had conversations with you to be like, I don't know what it is going to be, but you are going to write books, or you're going to start a company, or you're got more than one that you already have. It's like there's just, I just fundamentally, like when people go through pain, and choose to try to learn from it like you have, like choose to try to engage it like you have. It's just a growth mechanism like any other. And, I think as a result, you already have started to help and impact and love so many people because of what you've gone through. But you will continue to do so much more as a result. And it's exactly what you're talking about. You're already experiencing loss differently today than you have in the past.
Exactly.
Like, the fact that you used the statement in there, like when somebody passes, like you know what this is like. Like, you're 18? Are you 19? You're 18, right? Yeah, you're 18 years old and you have like a pattern to this. Like, on one hand, I would never wish that on anybody. And then at the exact same time, you're seeing some of this, growth already in your perspective, the way that you talk about it, the things that you've taken away, that I just wanted people to hear, from you and the way you told that and the way you told that story, et cetera. Because I think for me, what I really want to do, I kind of with the second half of our conversation here, if you will, or closing of our conversation, is just to make that trust practical, to be like, okay, what do I do? Like when I don't know how to just like have more faith, or I don't know how to believe more, like tell me like what to do. I wish I had faith of so-and-so that you imagine it's really easy for. I don't think it's easy for anybody, but you have that person or that you imagine it's really easy for, like, what am I supposed to do? And that's kind of what I want to talk about for the rest of our time, is thinking about, what you guys did in those circumstances, what somebody can do. I think it's really important to clarify, like, none of the three of us are here because we're the experts at this. We're like three here because we've all struggled with this. And so we can just talk about like how do you struggle through this to trust more, and what does it mean to actually trust God? But we have a couple verses that we were talking about ahead of time that I just, I think are clarifying. One of them just kind of dispels, any kind of idea that, if you have enough faith, or if you trust enough, like everything will be okay, and there'll never be pain. Yeah. Because Jesus literally promises the opposite, which is just something that's so interesting to me when people say like, well, why do bad things happen? Or, how could a good God allow it? It's like, well, I'm just letting you know, like the God of the Christian faith, like that's literally promised to us in this world. Yeah. Because in John 16:33, Jesus is speaking, and he said, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Yeah. In this world, so he's not talking about heaven, this isn't the next, but in this world you will, not like you might, or there's good chances, happen. Like you will have trouble. And we were talking about already, not that the three of us around this table are old by any means, but we've just said like already we have lived enough life where that word peace is becoming like more and more the goal of life, right? Like it's less and less like, oh, I just want nice. Like all the success or all the money or all that. Like it's just peace. You know what I mean? Just like calmness, just like that absence of anxiety or fear or stress.
Just pure happiness.
Yeah. And Jesus says, it is in me. He says, in me, you may have peace. So he doesn't refer to circumstances. He doesn't refer to certainty. He doesn't say like things will be all right one day. He just says, stay connected to me and you will have peace. Right. I think there's verses that maybe add some confusion. I think about, we were talking Romans 8:28 says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. But a verse like that doesn't mean that everything will be good. Oh. That's not what that verse is saying at all. He's just saying, I can take painful things, I can take broken things, I can take sinful things, and I can make good come out of them. Yeah. But that's not like any kind of promise that like bad will never happen. So I just think it's so helpful to clarify for people, having trust or, having faith does not mean that, like things will start going better, absolutely if you have exactly more faith. So one of the things that we talked about in the episode, one of the verses was Hebrews 13:8, which says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. So that's connected to that last verse we just said, where he says, in me, like in the person of Jesus, not in circumstances, but in the person of Jesus. And part of the reason you can trust in him is because he is certain. Like he is the same yesterday and today and forever. So I think about like you 8.5 years ago, your freshman year, like coming to North Point, like your lives are different from then. And you had no idea. You could not have predicted how your world would change, how your circumstances would change, right? But Jesus was the same, when you came in elementary school and when you came freshman year. He was the same then, and he's the same right now in this moment, and he'll be the same whenever we leave this world. Yeah. Matt clarified in the episode that Jesus, his character is the same. His promises are the same. Like those things never change. And at some point in life, I think we just kind of have to make that decision to be like, do I want to keep trusting in me when like I can't even keep my own goals, much less like, everything the Bible speaks to and all of that? Or do I want to keep trusting in circumstances that always seem to change? I keep doing that throughout this whole quarantine process. Yeah. I'm like, man, I hope this comes back. I hope football comes back. Or I hope whatever, Yeah. And I keep hoping for more circumstances, even though circumstances just let me down. Yeah. Or we can say, like, I can do something different. Like, I'm not going to do the insanity thing over and over again and expect a different result. Like, I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to place my trust in the person of Jesus. Even if I don't know exactly what that means today, like, I'm going to go in that direction. And then the last one that we had talked about is this, and I think this is the one I'd want to camp on with you guys and talk about some of our Africa experiences and stuff like that too. But Proverbs 3, verse 5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. So there's multiple parts of that. One, I like how when he uses the word trust, he says lean, like there's a physical leaning, like where are you going to put your weight in? Again, it's not just like a belief or a feeling. There's an action oriented. And then he says in all your ways acknowledge him, or in all your ways submit to him. So sometimes I think we just make this more confusing than it needs to be. I think the hardest part is just the action. It's not always necessarily knowing what we need to do. Yeah. But when we talk about trust, it's like, if we were to just talk about trust in any normal relationship, like to trust somebody, you're going to communicate with them. Yeah. Right. To trust somebody, you're going to spend time with them. And then if you really trust them, like you're going to hand them parts of your life that, are important to you, and trust that they're not going to, hurt you with it. Right. Trust that they're going to take care of those parts of your life. So, whether it's your time or your finances or your secrets or whatever it is that you trust somebody with, it's the action of, right.
Yeah, doing something.
Which is different than belief. I think you can believe in somebody, like you can believe one, that they're real because you see them, but two, in their potential. And that's different from trusting somebody. And so I think that's just such a good distinction for people. So I think a lot of people are like, well, what does it mean to trust God? It's like, it's kind of shortening that time span in between when you know what you need to do and actually doing it. Like when you know what God has called you to, or you know what he's focused on, and actually doing it. So I don't know if you guys, would add things to that, but I think it's like, maybe there's a secret and you're like, I know I shouldn't be keeping the secret. Like, I know I need to tell somebody. I don't need to tweet it, but like, I need to talk to my small group, or I need to talk to a trusted friend or whatever, Like, I know I need to do that. Or there's this habit, and I just keep going back to the same habit, or I keep trying to numb with the same thing, or there's this person, or, this relationship that I know is toxic for me, or I know always pulls me off course. Like, and I know I shouldn't keep going back to that place or that group, or, it's reading my Bible. Like I know my faith would probably be stronger, and I'd probably trust God if I just spent more time with him, but I just never do it. So there's all of these different things. Would you guys add anything to that? Just the action side of the trust side of what we're talking about, not just being a feeling or an emotion.
I mean, I think you hit on most of it, how it's not just believe and everything will be great, but it's more of you have to take those actions, take those steps for the good to come out kind of thing. But it's not always going to be there. Yep. There's going to be times where there's no good whatsoever. You can't see any good in any way, shape, or form, but God is working on that good and on you and within you to create that good. It's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Yep. And I love how in this verse it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and in all your ways, submit to him. Because I think for us, like, we tend to like trust God with just the things like we can't control. So I'm going to go get a lottery ticket and pray that I, win $20 million or whatever, because I can't control that. But there's so much, at least in America, that we feel like we can control. But we've gotten to travel together to Kenya. We went this past year, and we're hoping for a round 2 this year, but it's not really the case. You can't really leave the U.S. at all right now. But when we were there, well, you and I mean, it was almost the end for us.
Yeah,
in that
we were
safari.
close.
Yeah.
We have a bond now. I don't think
I know.
we'll never be
You go through a
broken.
near-death
Life or
experience
death.
together.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I've told Emily the story, if she's going to find out about it. Usually when I'm in near-death scenarios, like they happen a lot, I try not to tell Emily because she panics. But we were going to the safari at the end of the trip, which is like, how long is that drive, y'all?
like 7.
was like-
It's so long.
Are you talking about the time in the Jeep or?
Yeah, like the little Jeep's trying to get to the safari, and we're on
Yeah.
that bumpy
On the
paved
road, it's
road.
like, yeah.
Yeah, like
That was a couple hours.
It
that was
It was
long.
like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah,
We were-
and half the
yeah.
road's like unpaved. There's
Oh,
these
I don't think
giant,
any of
like-
it was
Dirt
paved. There was
everywhere.
no
Yeah.
paved road.
Yeah, so you basically, I
rocks.
don't even know how to make people. It's almost like a bad traffic story. If you're not there, maybe it's not that interesting. But it's like basically, it's all like just cloudy all around you because it's just like unpaved
the
road. So
rocks,
dust
yeah.
is just being kicked up, so you can't like really see around you. It's an
Yeah.
unpaved road, so there's like these huge divots everywhere. You're like flying, like hitting your head on the ceiling of the car
Yeah.
and like
Jumping.
rattling. You're like rattling.
No type of seatbelts.
Yeah, exactly. For like 4 or 5 hours.
Mind
Yeah.
you, this thing that we were in had no windows.
Yeah, no.
No windows at all. So
Just like big-
dust,
just like a-
everything
Yeah.
was all hitting us at the same time.
Well, I think when
Yeah.
you say no window, it just sounds like the windows were rolled down. I'm talking like it
Yeah.
was like half of the
Right.
door was
Just
not
didn't
there. It was
exist.
not
like
there.
Yeah.
you where
You
you're
could've easily
sitting
fallen out.
up
Right.
to your knee.
Right.
It was like
Yeah.
your knees were next to the part of the window that was gone.
Like
Exactly.
if you get pushed, you're out. Like
Yeah,
you're
Yeah.
done.
exactly.
And we're on 150 miles an hour. I don't know how fast we're going, but it feels like, I mean, these guys just have no fear. I don't know how they know
Oh,
where
yeah.
they're going, but they just go.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, it's
I think they just
wild.
go.
That's probably why it's so long. It was only 30 minutes.
yeah,
away.
you're
just
just
run
going
in a
in a
circle.
circle.
Yeah, but there's like this cloud that you can't see more. I don't know, 10 yards in front of you, and all of a sudden
Yep.
a truck comes like out of the cloud in our direction.
Literally.
Yeah, our guy like swerves, like a wheel kind of comes off the ground, like swerves to the side.
Yeah.
And
Tokyo
goes so
drift.
close to my side of whatever that is, not a window, but the
Yeah,
open door thing.
Yeah.
That I almost, yeah.
Literally like right next to it.
Yeah.
Like if it would have been like an inch or
I mean, we are
any
head-on
closer,
collision.
we were done.
Yeah, if my arm's out the window, it is gone.
It is
in
chopped
Kenya.
off, gone.
Yeah.
Like, and we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
In Africa.
Talk about uncertainty. Yeah, I mean, we'd be done. Yeah. Anyways, but the point of that is, I mean, we were meeting people in Kenya, and now people that we like care about, have relationships with, that we love, that we want to support, like that are literally trusting God for the next meal in their life.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's still, we've been there and we can't even comprehend that. But I think
Yeah.
talking to these people, it sinks in a little more. I remember asking my friend David there, I was trying to, talk to him about his life and, where he works and all this kind of stuff and how it's hard to find work. And we were talking about literally meals. And I was like, have you ever had to like miss meals? And he laughed. Like he just thought it was the cutest thing that I would ask that because he was like, that's just all the time. I mean, we don't eat 3 meals a day. Like we just, he was like, yeah, if you don't find lunch, hopefully dinner. If you can't find dinner, you wake up in the morning, you look for breakfast. He's like, sometimes I've gone days. That's just like what you do here. That's just normal. You don't know if you're going to have shelter. Like you don't know.
Yeah, there was kids sleeping in
crazy.
dumpsters.
Yeah.
It was insane.
You talk about loss. I mean, we're blessed in that, like you guys having experienced loss young. It's not to minimize your loss or any loss we've experienced, but you guys are almost in a rare category about how much you've experienced young. I mean, all of these people have double-digit people that they know and love and care about that have passed away.
And they talk about it openly too. It's not a weird thing for them. Like, it's just normal.
It's like expected, whether it's disease or it's starvation or it's, they were living outside and, had no shelter, whatever it is. I mean, there's so many things that it's just so common for them. And yet at the same time, there's no bitterness or resentment or anger towards God. Like,
Which is crazy.
It's hard to,
Because
If
here,
anything,
that
it
is
just
such
strengthens
a
it.
it's such a big thing here in America.
Yeah.
That it's like the first person you can be angry at is God because you went through that loss. But there, it's like every day is so amazing and cherished.
Yeah.
That it's like it's just crazy how much they love God so much and they have so little.
Yeah.
Happiest people on earth. The happiest people I've ever met in my entire life.
It's wild.
Yeah.
They just don't, in the U.S. we have this expectation like we're owed things, like we're owed a comfortable, happy life. We're
deserve
owed
everything.
big houses and cars and health and for our loved ones to be safe. Like we just have this expectation. And they're like, we don't feel like we're owed anything.
Yeah.
Like everything we get is a blessing from God. And like, he is the way out of a lot of this, this poverty, this pain, this, et cetera, that they experience. And so it is wild to watch. to make the assumption that because bad things happen, people would run from God. It's actually so often you experience people that have gone through pain and they realize, well, there's nothing else I can turn to.
Yeah.
There's no other option that I have, but a God who loves me. And so you see that a lot as well.
There's people that'll try and
Yep.
there's nothing. You can't find anything. They just come back and they realize that is the option.
Yeah. So I do think it's hard for us to have perspective on that, living in the world, and we shouldn't feel guilty for living here or whatever it is, but just the reality that there's so much in our life that we don't have to trust God for, if you will, meaning, most people listening to this podcast haven't wondered where their next meal is going to come from, etc. That, then we just kind of start to blame them for bigger things as opposed to be grateful for all these things that we do have. So I know it's been a long conversation. I think if we were to whittle it down to one thing, it's that acknowledge in all your ways. It's just if there's any area of your life where God has spoken, where you haven't invited him into, it's the action, it's the trust, and maybe a belief or maybe a feeling will follow. Maybe there'll be a time where you feel like, man, it's rewarding. I'm glad I did that. I feel good about it emotionally. But the emotion doesn't have to be there to trust, to put your weight in.
Yeah.
Totally.
We use the example of every time you get in a car, you're trusting it's going to get you somewhere. Every time you sit in a chair, you trust it's going to, that's the action-oriented piece that I think is so clarifying. Well, thank you guys for joining the conversation, for your time, for being vulnerable with your stories and talking about some hard moments that you have been through and are still in the midst of. And hopefully, this conversation was helpful to some people listening. We have our first driveway groups kicking off this week, so we get to be together in person. Make sure that you guys are following us on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss anything, so you can find out where we're having those groups, etc. It was awesome having a conversation with y'all today.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
And we will see you guys on our next podcast.